Hi, this is Molly Barnes. Art News, 88.5 KCSN, Arts and Roots Radio. And tonight I am delighted to have as my guests Bob Gino, the Orlando Gallery owner, and Mike LeFevre, one of his new discoveries, who's going to have a show there in a couple of days. Bob Gino is one of the best art dealers in Los Angeles. He's also one of the oldest. I don't mean in age, but the number of years he's been around. His gallery, the Orlando Gallery, is located in Tarzana, and he's discovered and promoted the careers of many of the top artists, including Bruce Houston, Edie Danieli, Don Lagerberg, and now he is handling Strombottny. Tonight, he's brought one of his new discoveries, the artist Michael LeFevre, who he plans to make into a star. Michael, how did this come about? How did your
I'm originally
start?
from Ohio, and I went all the way through school and college and studied, and that got me into advertising.
What's the
agencies.
best commercial you've done? Anything we would hear?
I hanged a guy once for a steakhouse.
Right.
So,
that was yours.
That was me. We got lots of angry letters, but
Why?
People didn't like the idea of someone being hanged on the air.
Well, how did you get involved with painting?
You know, I was involved with painting when I was coming up through high school and college, and it was really my kids, my two boys, who are now second and third graders. But a few years ago, they liked me to draw their trucks. So I started doing that more and more. And I would do it freehand, and I would do it on a computer. And the more I did it, the more I thought, I should have been doing this all along. And that's kind of how it developed. I took a class from, what was her name? It was Molly Barnes.
Right,
yes, I took a class from Molly Barnes. And she pointed me in a lot of directions, one of which was Bob Gino over at Orlando Gallery.
How would you describe the work that you're showing? You have 38 pieces in the show.
And it's called No Place Special is the name of the show. And it's kind of about places that I think are special because they're not famous necessarily. You know, the Eiffel Tower is a famous place, so it's special. But what about a gas pump in the middle of Route 66? What about some benches out in front of a cottage someplace in England or New England? I like these scenes. I call them scenes.
Do you create these on the computer and then take them out and adjust the paint? How do you do them? How do you create them? They're very flat.
They're very flat. There's a couple ways I do it. Sometimes it's actually a hand painting. It's acrylic on canvas. Other times it is completely computer generated, and I'll take it to a printmaker and they'll make a canvas giclée of it. Then I can hand embellish that either with color or with gel.
And what is this? It reminds me of Afternoon, Death in the Afternoon. It's empty chairs on the beach.
It's a bunch of empty chairs on an empty beach in Brighton, England, actually. It's a photograph I took. And the chairs all have a cover on front of them and on top to protect people probably from the sun or the rain. And one of the chairs has its cover off. And to me, it's a still frame scene. You can look at this and think, what happened? What's going to happen? Why is that different?
Now, there's a lot of humor in many of these pieces, although there's a loneliness that's pervasive, but particularly the ones that are based on the painting American Gothic.
Oh, yeah.
Rather than mom and pop kettle, you've got Hunts and Jack Daniels.
Uh-huh.
How did that come about?
Ketchup and whiskey.
and booze.
Whiskey,
yeah.
Right, you know.
Yeah.
And another one has a credit card and then prescription drugs. I call that plastic and pills. Another one is a martini shaker and a martini glass. Another one is the dollar sign.
What was in your head when you did that?
You know, it's a little bit of an homage to Grant Wood and American Gothic, but since 1930, it's developed over the last 75 years. American Gothic isn't the same as it was, the scene he was portraying. So I've replaced the farmer and his daughter with icons of contemporary society that have a little comment behind them.
That's what I find interesting about his work, because there's a double entendre in his compositions, actually, and he brings you forward and back. But there's a classic elements to his back in reference to his pop imagery is forward. So there's a play back and forth with various cultures, actually.
And then the one that seems to be your favorite, the gas pump.
The gas pump,
Yeah.
which yes.
But it's a vehicle for the background.
It's a vehicle for the
And
background.
see, I didn't
actually.
know that until Bob told me that.
Yeah, because the background becomes more significant than the foreground when you really look at it, because it pulls you into the painting, which that I think makes it very successful. Even though you have the foreground, which is strong and significant, but the background is the element that you're really drawn to, actually.
So you
because
want
it's
to actually
cool.
see behind it.
Yes, you want to get in there behind it, and it's cool and inviting. Let's put it that way.
Do you want me to take that out? I can repaint it without the gas pump.
No. I like it the way it is.
I do too.
Who are some of your favorite artists, Mike?
Oh, golly. It goes way back to Edward Hopper. It starts with Hopper.
Yeah, that's what their work reminds me of. Yeah.
Exactly.
Ever since college. And then John Register, the West Coast version of that.
Yes.
I used to.
really.
Sure.
I was really close friends with him all through college. Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
right.
he just his. There was a show at Pepperdine maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That was fabulous. It just blew my socks off. I went back 3 or 4 times in that month. It was really great.
Do you remember he showed with David Stewart? I wanted him, Jackie Anhalt wanted him, and he wanted to go with a man. And he showed with David Stewart, and he made a fortune. He was from a very wealthy family. In fact, the family home is the Pratt Art Institute now in New York.
I would say he's an influence, not maybe literally, but certainly that his vision, those clean lines, those flat images,
I don't
and
think,
yet it still projects dimension and depth.
And loneliness. They were very, very lonely.
Yes.
And there was always
I don't think you're the only artist I've ever shown that Register was an influence on. I've had a few others too. I remember that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Michael, at one point, I think you showed me some pictures that you did of words where you slightly changed them.
Oh, yeah. I have a series called Wordscapes. That's what I call them. They're basically kind of clever, provocative words or phrases that I put on canvas, sometimes with a scene, sometimes just the words itself.
For example?
One of the people's most favorite one is stacked on each other. I have the names Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Yoko.
Oh.
Why? Because she broke up the group?
Well, John and Yoko became kind of, whether you know that they broke up because of that or whether it was other influences, and there's a lot of theories about that. But Yoko played a very important role in the Beatles, in pop culture, in changing the world, in changing Lennon, who helped change the world. So John and Yoko make sense. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels, the disciples. So I just thought we could overlap John the disciple with John the pop singer.
John went to a show of Yoko's in New York, and he climbed a ladder, which was part of the installation, and then the little tiny typewritten on the ceiling was the word yes. And he said if it had said no, he never would have met her.
He would not have introduced himself. Yeah.
Yeah, he was so intrigued by that.
Yeah, just that act alone. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. What are some of the other words that you've altered in the paintings?
I have one called Freedom, with the dumb spelled D-U-M-B, and along the same lines as Americant, which can mean whatever you want. America can't do everything for everybody. America can't do what. You
had some about therapists. What?
Oh, that's right. I stacked the word therapist in such a way that you separate it into 2 words and it becomes the rapist. It's spelled exactly the same way. It's amazing what a little space between a couple of letters will do.
How do you do those? Do you go through a thesaurus, or how do you get those?
They just come to me sometimes. One of my favorite new ones that I wrote earlier this year, and I didn't even base it on anything, is Californicate. But now there's a TV series called Californication. So sometimes you can't use it,
But do you like Bruce Naumann's work?
Oh, yeah. Naumann and Rouchet, very clever use of it. They do great visuals with that kind of stuff, too.
Remember the picture that Warhol did of Nixon with data or bright orange colors, and then at the bottom it was "Vote McGovern"?
Yes.
I mean, it was so cool. And then Naumann. I mean, all of those. The word paintings, you do a double take. You look at them, and then you go, "Oh my God!" I mean, it's really a shot.
It is, actually. But that's what's so interesting about art. It's because the idea of the artist's concept and using that medium in order to express themselves and to relate to society, in reference to society.
You can do that with pictures. You can do that with words. We use both all the time anyway. So.
What's your intent? What do you want people to come away with when they buy your work or when they see it?
I kind of want to start a conversation. That's the way I've put it before. It's my opening sentence in a conversation. Bob likes the gas pump on the lonely road. Well, maybe he says something to me about that. We have a conversation. He tells me about a vacation. I tell him about something that happened. All of a sudden, we relate. We're friends. We connect. These are the beginnings. These are the opening sentences for a conversation I will have with somebody that I may not actually have a physical conversation with, ever. If it hangs in their bedroom, in their kitchen, and over their fireplace, it doesn't matter.
So what's next for you? What are you going to do next?
Actually, next for me is getting ready the end of this year for, I have a gallery in Burbank that's interested in my black and white photography. So I'm preparing a bunch of plates for that right now.
Is there humor involved in that as well?
Yeah, and some of the paintings I've done are based on some of those photographs. So there's a little redundancy, an overlap with it. Sometimes the photograph is actually the star, and sometimes the painting is the star.
Bob, back to you. How do you see yourself as making Michael a star?
Well,
Yeah,
what does he have to
that's
do?
an excellent
that's
question.
not totally up to me. That's partly up to Michael
Oh,
as well.
yeah.
What would you advise to him or to artists that are in mid-career,
Well,
mid-age, and starting
mid-age,
new
right?
careers?
Okay. Naturally, promote yourself as much as you can and get as much exposure as you can, but also dedicate yourself to what you're about, and also dedicate yourself to a gallery. Because that's the only way you're going to do it. Because your name becomes attached with the gallery,
Right.
and that makes you more significant as an artist. Yeah.
Well, thank you both for coming. Michael, do you want to say anything before we sign off?
No.
When is your show?
It opens October 2nd, and there's an opening reception on the 6th, 5 to 9 p.m.
Are you going to have a
Saturday night.
band or anything?
I'm going to have jazz, but it won't be live.
And will your family all be there so they
My
can
mom
see
and
the
dad
kids?
are coming in from Ohio. My boys and my wife will be there. A few friends, family. Yeah.
Are you going to have food?
And lots of food.
Yeah, I was kind of specific about that, wasn't I?
Yes, he was.
I got kind of picky about the food.
And he's also going to have drinks.
Yeah.
Oh, good. What do you I always just serve wine. And
but this is
they're
gonna
lucky
be,
if they get peanuts.
Well,
Yeah.
I know. I serve wine and water, but this time we're going to have more.
And what's your address?
18376 Ventura Boulevard, Tarzana.
Do you want to give us a phone number?
Yes, 705-5368. That's 818.
You're listening to Art News 88.5 KCSN Arts and Roots Radio. I'm Molly Barnes, your host, every Monday night from 6:30 to 7. And I've had some fabulous guests tonight, Bob Gino, Mike LeFevre. Art is not for everyone, never has been, it never will be. But for those of you who love it like we do, we want to turn you on. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Molly.